In 2013, you became the youngest ever U.S. ambassador to the UN and a member of President Obama's cabinet. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you put some of that with President Obama into action and some of the things you're proud of achieving during those times?
It was the greatest privilege of my life to represent the United States. I was not the first immigrant to do it, as you know. Madeleine Albright had very proudly stood behind that placard and had been a real inspiration to me when I was in my early 20s, watching her duke it out with the boys up at the United Nations.
I'm going to ask you about that too.
I actually went to see her when President Obama named me, went to see Madeleine Albright, and she gave me multiple tips, but one of her tips was that when she had been ambassador, she looked around among the 183 countries at the UN and she noticed that she was one of 7 women ambassadors. So 7 countries out of 183 were represented by women. That was back in 1993. And she created something that she called the G7, the Girl 7.
Oh my gosh.
Which of course mirrored the group of 7, the actual G7.
Of course.
And she created, it was a cross-regional, very small network, but they managed to get
I love it.
Real work done on behalf of women's empowerment and women's dignity around the world. And so she said, I think you should do the same. So I went and I created the G37. We were up to 37, but out of 193 countries 20 years later. And she was so right, if only just as a commiserative network, but also because we were able to push issues like sexual violence and peacekeeping and a whole bunch of other things, using the fact that we each came from so many different corners of the world. Because at the UN, countries tend to sort of aggregate within their regional groups, and it's very rare that you have a group like this that just cuts across geography and socioeconomics and so forth. But I'd say the sort of greatest moments for me representing the United States were when the United States was driving a coalition to an outcome. And so the best example of that is one that gets almost no attention in retrospect, which is President Obama's leadership in the face of the Ebola crisis. And, you know, it's typical when something gets dealt with, it's gone and nobody remembers it. But if you bring yourself back to the level of fear and panic that existed in this country and all around the world, and above all in the communities that were affected in West Africa, the courage that President Obama showed sending the U.S. military into a public health mission of the kind that had never been seen before, in the face not only of Republican opposition to doing that, but also much Democratic concern. And just, again, the fear, and now we live in a culture where fear is used as a weapon of politics much more often even than then, with migrants and refugees and being demonized and so forth. But you really saw, I think, in that clash of 2 visions about whether we are a country governed by fear or whether we believe in human solidarity, but also whether we believe what is factually true, which is that our fates are connected to the fates of people living very far away. So for the president to have led in that manner, sent troops and health workers into the eye of the storm, and then I, as the ambassador, to get to now say to every other country in the world, okay, this is what we're doing, now what are you doing? That was a horrible circumstance for it to be happening, but just such a reminder of how indispensable American leadership is and what we can do when we lead a coalition. The Paris Agreement on Climate, of course, is another example. The ISIS coalition that we mobilized. There are a lot of different examples, but that one, because of the political thicket that he had to make his way through, I think I just felt especially proud to be representing him